Something in your life has been shifting, and you can feel it. Not loudly, not in a way you can easily explain. But deep down, there's this quiet sense that you're not the same person you used to be. The things that once excited you don't hit the same anymore. The conversations you used to enjoy now feel empty. Even the environments that once felt familiar now feel distant. And maybe you've been asking yourself, what's happening to me? Here's the truth most people don't realize. You're not falling apart. You're being reshaped. Because sometimes, before your life expands, your old identity has to loosen its grip. In that process, it can feel uncomfortable, confusing, even lonely. There are moments where you feel out of place, like you don't fully belong anywhere. You try to explain it, but people don't really understand. So you stay quiet. You observe more. You think deeper. You start questioning things you once accepted without hesitation. And slowly, your awareness begins to grow. You start noticing patterns in your thoughts, in your habits, in the way certain situations keep repeating themselves. And for the first time, you don't ignore it. You pause. You reflect. You begin to realize that growth isn't just about gaining something new. It's about letting go of what no longer aligns with who you're becoming. That's why some connections feel like they're fading. That's why certain routines no longer make sense. That's why you feel pulled in a different direction, even if you don't fully understand where it leads. It's not random. It's a shift in perspective, a deeper awareness asking you to evolve. But here's the part people don't talk about enough. Growth doesn't always feel inspiring. Sometimes it feels like losing clarity before finding it again. Like walking through uncertainty without a clear map. Like standing between who you were and who you're becoming. And that space in between, it can feel heavy. You might doubt yourself. You might question your decisions. You might even wonder if you're moving in the right direction at all. But that tension, that inner pull, is often where real transformation begins. Because when you stop running from discomfort, you start understanding it. You begin to see that those restless thoughts, those moments of emotional weight, they're not there to break you. They're there to wake you up, to show you what needs your attention, to reveal what you've been avoiding, to push you toward a version of yourself that requires more awareness, more honesty, more courage. And yes, that version of you will feel unfamiliar at first. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means you're growing. Think about it. Every meaningful shift in life starts with discomfort. Every new level of understanding begins with questioning. Every stronger version of yourself is built by facing what you once avoided. So if you've been feeling different lately, more aware, more reflective, more disconnected from the old version of you, take a moment. Don't rush to fix it. Don't rush to go back to what felt comfortable. Instead, sit with it. Because this phase you're in right now, it's not about having all the answers. It's about becoming someone who's ready to handle them. You're learning to think for yourself, to see beyond surface-level distractions, to understand your emotions instead of being controlled by them. And that kind of growth takes time. It takes patience. It takes the willingness to walk through uncertainty without needing immediate clarity. But slowly, things begin to make sense. Not all at once, but piece by piece. You start making decisions that feel more aligned. You start setting boundaries you once avoided. You start choosing growth, even when it's uncomfortable. And one day, you'll look back at this phase and realize it wasn't confusion. It was preparation. Preparation for a life that requires a stronger mindset, a clearer sense of self, a deeper level of awareness. So if you've been feeling like something is changing within you, you're not lost, you're evolving. And that process, even when it feels uncertain, is shaping you into someone who can carry more responsibility, more clarity, and more purpose. Not because it was guaranteed, but because you chose to grow through it. So don't rush this chapter. Don't silence what you're starting to understand. Lean into it. Reflect on your journey. Pay attention to what you're outgrowing. And trust the process of becoming, even when it feels unfamiliar. Because the version of you that's emerging right now isn't random. It's built through every moment you chose awareness over avoidance. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to pause and really think about where you are in your journey right now. And if you're ready to keep growing, to keep becoming more aware, and to keep moving forward with intention, stay connected with Return to Awakening. Because this is just the beginning of understanding who you truly are becoming. And even now, there are moments where you can feel the shift happening in real time. A thought crosses your mind, and instead of reacting the way you used to, you pause. That pause is new. That awareness is new. It's subtle, but it's powerful. Because before, you might have moved through life on autopilot, reacting, repeating, following patterns you never questioned. But now, something inside you is slowing everything down. You're starting to see the space between what happens and how you respond to it. And in that space, you're finding yourself. You're realizing that not every thought deserves your attention. Not every emotion needs to control your actions. Not every situation requires your energy. That realization changes everything. Because when you become aware of your patterns, you gain the ability to change them. And that's where true growth begins. Not in forcing yourself to become someone else, but in understanding who you've been and choosing differently. There will be days where this feels empowering, where you feel clear, grounded, in control. But there will also be days where it feels overwhelming, where your mind feels crowded with questions, where your emotions feel heavier than usual, where the clarity you thought you had seems to disappear. That doesn't mean you're going backward. It means you're going deeper. Because real transformation isn't a straight line. It moves in layers. You uncover something, you understand it, you grow from it. And then another layer reveals itself. And each layer asks a little more from you. More honesty, more patience, more willingness to face parts of yourself you once avoided. That's why this journey can feel isolating at times. Not because you're alone, but because not everyone is willing to go this deep within themselves. You may notice that surface-level conversations don't satisfy you anymore. That distractions don't work the way they used to. That you crave meaning, truth, depth. And sometimes that makes you feel out of place. But being out of place is often a sign that you're no longer meant for the spaces you've. It's not rejection. It's redirection. Your mind is expanding. Your awareness is sharpening. Your standards are evolving. And with that evolution comes a natural separation from what no longer aligns. This doesn't mean you have to disconnect from everything all at once. It means you start becoming more intentional with your time, with your energy, with the people and environments you allow into your life. You begin to ask yourself deeper questions. Does this align with who I'm becoming? Does this bring clarity or confusion? Am I growing here or just staying comfortable? And sometimes the answers aren't easy. Sometimes they require change. And change, even when it's necessary, can feel uncomfortable. because it asks you to step away from what's familiar and move towards something uncertain. But that uncertainty is where new possibilities begin. You're not meant to have everything figured out right now. You're meant to become someone who can navigate uncertainty with awareness. Someone who doesn't panic when things feel unclear, but instead stays grounded enough to move forward anyway. That's strength, not perfection, not having all the answers, but continuing to move with intention, even when the path isn't fully visible. And slowly, without even realizing it, you're building that strength. Through every moment, you choose reflection over reaction. Through every time you sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. Through every decision where you choose growth, even when it's difficult. This is how you evolve. Not overnight, not through sudden breakthroughs, but through consistent awareness. Through small, quiet shifts that reshape the way you think, the way you feel, the way you live. And one of the most powerful shifts you're experiencing right now is the way you see yourself. You're no longer defining yourself by past versions, by old mistakes, by outdated beliefs about who you are. You're starting to understand that you are not fixed. You are not limited to who you used to be. You are constantly becoming. And that realization opens a different kind of freedom. A freedom that doesn't come from changing everything around you, but from understanding that you have the ability to change how you show up within it. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You start to notice how much of your life is shaped by your perspective, how much power there is in your awareness, how much control you actually have over your direction, even if you don't control every outcome. That's when things begin to shift internally. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop looking for external validation. You stop needing everything to make sense before you take a step forward. Because now you trust something deeper. Not blind certainty, but a quiet confidence in your ability to grow through whatever comes next. And that quiet confidence, it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need attention. It doesn't need validation. It shows up in small, almost invisible ways. In the way you walk away from things that once drained you. In the way you choose silence instead of reacting. In the way you start protecting your peace without needing to explain yourself. That's growth. Not loud, not dramatic, but deeply real. And the more you lean into this version of yourself, the more you begin to understand something important. You don't have to chase everything anymore. Some things are not meant for you at this stage of your life. Some paths are distractions, not opportunities. Some doors are meant to stay closed, not because you're being, but because you're being directed elsewhere. And when you truly accept that, you stop forcing what doesn't fit. You stop trying to hold on to people, habits, or situations that clearly feel misaligned. Instead, you start trusting your inner signals. That feeling in your chest when something isn't right. That hesitation that tells you to pause. That clarity that quietly says, "This isn't for me anymore." Before, you might have ignored those signs. But now you listen. And the more you listen, the clearer everything becomes. Not instantly, but gradually, like fog slowly lifting from a path that was always there. You just couldn't see it before. And as that clarity grows, so does your sense of direction. You begin to move with more intention, not rushing, not forcing, but choosing. Choosing what aligns. Choosing what supports your growth. Choosing what reflects the person you are becoming, not the person you used to be. And this is where things start to change in a deeper way. Because when you start choosing differently, your life begins to respond differently. Your environment shifts. Your conversations shift. Even the way people interact with you begins to change. Not because you're trying to control anything, but because your energy, your mindset, your awareness has evolved. And not everyone will understand that. Some people may feel confused by your changes. Some may even question why you're not the same anymore. But that's part of the process. Growth will always feel unfamiliar to those who are used to the old version of you. And you have to be okay with that. Because this journey isn't about staying the same for the comfort of others. It's about becoming honest with yourself. It's about stepping into a version of you that feels real, even if it looks different from what others expect. That takes courage. To outgrow what's familiar. To question what you once accepted. To stand in your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. But every time you choose that path, you strengthen something within yourself, a sense of identity that isn't easily shaken, a mindset that isn't easily influenced, a level of awareness that keeps you grounded, even when life feels uncertain. And this is where your purpose begins to take a different shape, not as something distant or abstract, but as something that's built through your actions, your choices, your growth. It's not something you suddenly discover one day. It's something you develop through the way you handle challenges, through the way you respond to setbacks, through the way you continue moving forward, even when things don't go as planned. Every experience, every moment of reflection, every decision to grow instead of stay stuck, it's all shaping you, not perfectly, but intentionally. And even the moments that feel confusing right now, the ones where you're unsure, where things don't fully make sense, they're still part of that process. Because sometimes clarity doesn't come from thinking more. It comes from continuing to move, from taking small steps, from staying open, from allowing life to reveal what you need to see when you're ready to see it. So if you've been feeling like you're in between versions of yourself, like you've where you were, but haven't fully stepped into what's next, that's not a mistake. That's a transition. And transitions are not meant to feel stable. They're meant to stretch you, to challenge your old ways of thinking, to push you into deeper awareness, to prepare you for a level of growth that requires a different version of you. And that version of you is already forming in your thoughts, in your choices, in the way you're starting to see the world differently. You're not waiting to become that person. You're becoming them right now, in real time. With every moment, you choose awareness over distraction. With every moment, you choose growth over comfort. With every moment, you choose to understand yourself instead of avoiding what's within you. This is the work that most people avoid because it requires patience. It requires honesty. It requires letting go of illusions that once felt safe. But you're not avoiding it anymore. You're facing it. And that changes everything. And as you continue facing it, something else begins to happen. You start becoming more comfortable with yourself. Not the surface level version. Not the one shaped by expectations or habits. But the real version. The one that thinks deeply. The one that questions. The one that refuses to ignore what it feels. At first, that level of self-awareness can feel intense. Because you notice everything. Your patterns. Your reactions. Your triggers. Things you used to overlook now stand out clearly. And there are moments where that clarity feels heavy. Because once you see something, you can't unsee it. But that's also where your power begins to grow. Because awareness gives you a choice. A choice to repeat the same patterns, or to shift them, a choice to stay in old cycles, or to break them. And breaking cycles isn't easy. It requires you to respond differently in moments where your old self would have reacted automatically. It requires you to pause when everything inside you wants to rush, to stay calm when emotions rise, to walk away when something no longer serves you, even if it once meant everything. That's discipline on a deeper level, not forced, but chosen. And the more you choose it, the more you begin to trust yourself. Not in a perfect way, but in a real way. You trust that you won't abandon yourself just to fit in. You trust that you won't ignore your intuition just to feel comfortable. You trust that even if things get uncertain, you'll find your way through it. That kind of trust changes how you move through life. You stop seeking constant reassurance. You stop needing everyone to agree with you. You stop questioning your worth based on external outcomes. Because now your foundation is internal, built through awareness, strengthened through experience, refined through reflection. And with that foundation comes a different kind of peace. Not a perfect, always happy state, but a steady calm, a sense that even when things don't go as planned, you're still grounded within yourself. And that's rare, because most people are constantly searching for stability outside of themselves, in outcomes, in people, in situations they can control. But you're starting to understand something deeper. True stability comes from within, from knowing who you are, even as you continue to evolve, from accepting that change is part of growth, not something to resist, from realizing that you don't need to have everything figured out to keep moving forward. And once that understanding settles in, you begin to release a lot of pressure. The pressure to be perfect, the pressure to have all the answers, the pressure to move at the same pace as everyone else. You start moving at your own rhythm, and that rhythm feels more aligned, more intentional, more real. You give yourself space to think, space to grow, space to process what you're experiencing instead of rushing past it. And in that space, you start hearing yourself more clearly. Not the noise, not the doubts, but your actual thoughts, your real intentions, your deeper understanding of what matters to you and what doesn't. That clarity doesn't come from outside sources. It comes from within, from the moment you choose stillness over distraction, from the moment you choose reflection over avoidance. And slowly, your direction becomes clearer. Not because everything is perfectly planned, but because you're becoming more aligned with yourself. You're no longer moving based on what looks good, but based on what feels true. And that shift changes the entire trajectory of your life. Because when your actions align with your awareness, your decisions carry more weight. They're no longer impulsive. They're intentional. They're rooted in understanding, not reaction. And that's when you begin to notice something else. You're no longer afraid of being alone with your thoughts. In fact, you start valuing it, because it's in those quiet moments that you reconnect with yourself. You process, you understand, you reset. And instead of feeling empty, that solitude starts to feel necessary. Like a space where you rebuild your clarity, where you strengthen your mindset, where you realign with the version of yourself you're becoming. And the more you embrace that, the less you feel the need to escape it. Because you realize you're not trying to find yourself anymore. You're already doing it, right here, in these moments of awareness, in these decisions to grow, even when it's uncomfortable. This isn't something that happens all at once. It unfolds, layer by layer, moment by moment, and every step you take in this direction, no matter how small it feels, is shaping a version of you that is more aware, more grounded, and more prepared for what's ahead. And what's interesting is the more you grow, the less you feel the need to prove anything. Not your worth, not your progress, not even your understanding. You begin to realize that real growth isn't something you announce. It's something you live. It shows in how you carry yourself, in how you respond instead of react, in how you choose peace, even when chaos is an option. And that quiet shift, it changes how others perceive you too. Not because you're trying to be different, but because you are different. There's a calmness in your presence now, a depth in your words, a sense that you're not easily shaken by things that once would have affected you. And even if you don't always feel strong, you've become more steady, more aware of what truly matters, and less distracted by what doesn't. But growth also brings another realization. Not everything is meant to come with you. There are parts of your past that you'll have to release. Old habits that once felt normal, but now feel limiting. Old mindsets that once protected you, but now hold you back. Even certain expectations you had for your life may no longer align with who you are becoming. And letting go of those things can feel emotional, because you're not just releasing external things, you're releasing versions of yourself, versions that carried you through different phases of life, but are no longer meant to define your future. And there's a quiet kind of grief in that, not because those versions were wrong, but because they're complete. They've served their purpose, and now it's time to move forward without them. That's not loss. That's evolution. And the more you accept that, the lighter you begin to feel. Not because everything becomes easy, but because you're no longer holding onto what no longer fits. You create space. Space for new perspectives, new habits, new ways of thinking and living that align with who you are now. And in that space, something powerful begins to form. Clarity, not perfect clarity, but enough to guide you, enough to help you make decisions that feel right, even if they're difficult, enough to trust yourself, even when the outcome is uncertain. And that trust is one of the most important things you can build, because life will always have unknowns. There will always be moments where you don't have full control, where things don't go exactly as planned. But when you trust yourself, you don't fear those moments the same way. You face them with awareness, with intention, with the understanding that no matter what happens, you have the ability to adapt, to learn, and to keep moving forward. And that mindset changes how you experience everything. Challenges don't feel like the end anymore. They feel like part of the process. Setbacks don't define you. They refine you. Uncertainty doesn't stop you. It strengthens your ability to move without needing guarantees. And slowly, you begin to step into a different way of living. One where you're not just reacting to life, but consciously participating in it. You become more present, more aware of your choices, more intentional with your actions. You notice how your thoughts shape your reality, how your focus influences your direction, how your mindset affects the way you experience even the smallest moments. And once you see that, you start taking responsibility in a different way, not in a heavy, overwhelming sense, but in a grounded, empowering way. You understand that while you can't control everything, you can control how you respond, how you think, how you act, how you choose to grow from what you experience. And that realization puts you back in alignment with your own path. You stop comparing your journey to others. You stop measuring your progress based on external timelines. Because now you see, everyone is moving through their own process, at their own pace, with their own lessons. And your path is uniquely yours. It doesn't need to look like anyone else. It doesn't need to be understood by everyone. It just needs to be real to you. And when you start living from that place, you feel a different kind of freedom. Not freedom from challenges, but freedom from unnecessary pressure. Freedom from trying to fit into something that doesn't align. Freedom from holding onto expectations that were never truly yours. You begin to live with more honesty, more authenticity, more alignment between who you are and how you show up in the world. And that alignment is where your true strength begins to reveal itself, not as something loud or obvious, but as something steady, something real. And the deeper you stay connected to yourself, the more you begin to notice something subtle but life-changing. You stop abandoning yourself in moments that matter. Before, there may have been times where you ignored what you felt, just to keep the peace, just to fit in, just to avoid discomfort. But now, that's becoming harder to do, because your awareness won't let you. It gently pulls you back, reminds you, asks you to be honest, even when it's inconvenient. And that honesty starts to reshape your life in quiet but powerful ways. You begin to speak with more intention, not more but clearer. You begin to choose your energy carefully, not out of fear, but out of respect for your own peace. You begin to walk away when something feels misaligned, not because you don't care, but because you finally care about yourself enough not to stay where you don't belong. That's a different level of self-respect, one that isn't built overnight, but earned through moments where you choose growth over comfort. And as you continue making those choices, your relationship with yourself begins to change. You stop being your own biggest critic and start becoming your own guide. You listen more. You judge less. You allow yourself to learn instead of expecting yourself to be perfect. And in that shift, you create a sense of inner safety, a feeling that no matter what happens externally, you won't turn against yourself, that you'll stay grounded, that you'll stay aware, that you'll continue showing up for your own growth. And that kind of inner support is something most people spend their entire lives searching for. But you're building it, moment by moment, choice by choice. And it doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes easy. There will still be moments of doubt, moments where old thoughts try to resurface, moments where you feel the pull of past habits trying to bring you back into familiar patterns. But the difference now is that you see it. You recognize it for what it is. A pattern, not your identity. A habit, not your truth. And because you see it, you don't have to follow it. You can pause. You can choose differently, even if it's just by a small step, even if it's just by becoming aware in that moment, instead of reacting automatically. That's how change becomes real. Not through one big decision, but through many small conscious ones. And over time, those small decisions create a completely different direction, a different mindset, a different energy, a different version of you, one that is more grounded, more aware, more aligned. And as that version of you continues to grow, you start to feel something else. A quiet sense of purpose, not something loud or clearly defined, but something you can feel in the way you think, in the way you reflect, in the way you approach life with more depth than before. It's not about having a title or a perfect plan. It's about the way you show up, the way you handle challenges, the way you learn from your experiences, the way you continue evolving instead of staying stuck. That's where purpose begins, not as a destination, but as a direction. And the more aligned you become with yourself, the clearer that direction feels. You don't need constant confirmation. You don't need everything to make perfect sense. Because now you trust the process of becoming. You trust that each phase of your life is shaping you in ways you may not fully understand yet. And instead of resisting that, you start to work with it. You stay open. You stay aware. You stay willing to grow, even when growth feels uncomfortable. And that willingness is what sets you apart. Because most people wait for certainty before they move. But you're learning to move with awareness, even in uncertainty. To grow even without guarantees. To keep going, even when the path isn't fully clear. And that's where your strength truly begins to deepen. Not in knowing everything, but in becoming someone who can handle not knowing and still move forward with intention.